In this presentation, we'll discuss magnetic drug delivery and magnetic hyperthermia therapy. An external magnetic field is used in magnetic drug delivery to guide the nanodrug system with a magnetic nanocarrier to the cancer site. The magnetic field must be sufficiently powerful to make the nanodrug system stay at the donor site to overcome blood flow. Therefore, this magnetic delivery is applicable to only cancer close to the skin and areas with slow blood flow. The other technique of cancer treatment is to use heat to kill the cancer cells. Above temperature of 42 degrees centigrade, cancer tissue is destroyed. On the other hand, the normal tissue can withstand temperatures of up to 47 degrees centigrade. Hyperthermia is the term for this process of removing cancer tissue. Heat is produced when magnetic nanoparticles are subjected to an external radio frequency, which can be used to kill malignant tissues. In this way, magnetic nanoparticles can be employed as heat generators in magnetic hyperthermia. Let's see first magnetic drug delivery. Magnetic drug delivery involves injecting drug-attached magnetic nanoparticles into the bloodstream, then which are subsequently guided to the cancer location by an external magnetic field. The magnetic nanoparticles receive just torque from the homogeneous magnetic field, and the dipoles are simply rotated at fixed point by this field. As a result, the magnetic nanoparticles require a field gradient to move to the tissue site. The force applied to the dipole with the modulation M in this field is denoted by this equation. The external field accumulates nanoparticles at the cancer site, and the bonding between the drug and the particles is broken due to physiological conditions such as temperature, permeability, pH at the cancer site, resulting in the drug being delivered to the cancer. Several requirements must be met for magnetic drug delivery. First, the magnetic field should be strong enough to hold the particles in place at the cancer site while the magnetic force overcomes the blood flow. High magnetic fields, on the other hand, might be harmful to the human body. As a result, the speed of blood flow limits magnetic drug delivery. In addition, as the drug delivery system moves deeper into the human body, the field's intensity decreases. As a result, the depth available for magnetic drug delivery is also limited. Vascular occlusions caused by particle accumulation should also be taken into account. So in this magnetic drug delivery, we use the field gradient, magnetic field gradient, and force the magnetic field to move to the cancer site. Magnetic nanoparticles with drugs attached are injected into the bloodstream. Then, a gradient external magnetic field guides these particles to the cancer area. to the physiological conditions of the cancer tissues, the bonds between nanoparticles and drugs are broken, allowing the drugs to be released into the cancer tissue. Only locations with a slow blood flow can use magnetic drug delivery. Since the magnetic field inside human body is weakened, this technique also works on tissues that are close to the skin. Arterial occlusion are one of the negative effects of magnetic drug delivery. The first magnetic drug delivery experiment with a dog was carried out in 1932. The suspension of iron microparticle was injected into the dog's leg, and the particles were guided to the targeting tissue using a magnet in this experiment. After that, the iron oxide particles were used in animal tests as well. An animal experiment was also carried out to increase the magnetic gradient by putting a catheter into the blood artery. Because of the higher magnetic gradient in this experiment, the iron oxide particles were able to accumulate well in the targeting tissue. A radionuclide experiment was also attempted. The radioisotope yttrium-90 was bonded to the surface of the iron oxide particles in this experiment. The magnetic field guided these particles to the target tissue. Microparticles have previously been used in magnetic drug delivery experiments. The first animal experiment using iron oxide nanoparticles was performed in 1997. Soon after, drug-attached iron oxide nanoparticles were injected into 14 patients, and the magnetic field was used to observe the particles reaching the target tissue. As previously stated, magnetic drug delivery is only effective in areas where blood flow is slow. This approach is also effective on tissues close to the skin, since the magnetic field inside the human body is diminished. The side effects of magnetic drug delivery include arterial occlusions. As a result, research is now primarily concentrated on animal or in vitro investigations, with clinical application being limited. Next, let us see magnetic hyperthermia therapy. Magnetic nanoparticles are used in magnetic hyperthermia therapy. Hyperthermia therapy is a cancer treatment that makes use of the fact that heat can damage cancer tissues. The blood vessels of cancer tissues are imperfect because they are formed quickly in response to the cancer tissue's rapid expansion. As a result, the cancer tissues are unable to adequately release the input heat through the incomplete blood vessels. The cancer tissues are found to be killed if the temperature of the cancer tissues is maintained at 42 degrees in centigrade for 30 minutes. On the other hand, normal tissues can withstand temperature of up to 46 degrees in centigrade. Normal tissues can also be burned at this temperature. This difference between normal and malignant tissue responses to heat is used in hyperthermia therapy. External and internal hyperthermia are two types of hyperthermia. External hyperthermia uses microwave, radio wave, or ultrasonic wave to heat the cancer site from outside. On the other hand, internal hyperthermia involves injecting a heat-generating source into the cancer site. One of the internal hyperthermia is magnetic hyperthermia. The magnetic nanoparticle suspension is injected into the blood artery. After confirming that nanoparticles have accumulated at the cancer site using MRI or other diagnostic techniques, the nanoparticles are exposed to an electromagnetic wave, which causes the nanoparticles to generate heat and kills the cancerous tissues. The targeting ligands can be attached to the nanoparticle surface and observed selectively by the targeting organ. The heating sources are magnetic nanoparticles. The particles transform the electromagnetic waves' magnetic energy into heat energy. The magnetic nanoparticles generate heat in response to the external field through a number of heating mechanisms: eddy current loss, ferromagnetic resonance loss, hysteresis loss, relaxation loss, and frictional loss are the 5 types of losses. Brown relaxation loss and Neal relaxation loss are the 2 types of relaxation loss. Eddy current is caused by an oscillating magnetic field that creates a vortex current in the metal. Joule heat is produced as a result of this current. The eddy current heating in the nanoparticles can be neglected, since the nanoparticles are so small and the magnetic hyperthermia frequency is so low. Because the ferromagnetic resonance frequency is subsequently substantially higher than the field employed in the magnetic hyperthermia, the ferromagnetic resonance heating can also be ignored. In addition to the ferromagnetic resonance heating, ferromagnetic materials generate heat through hysteresis loss. The quantity of heat produced in this heating by hysteresis loss is proportional to the inner area of hysteresis loop. The single domain structure of nanoparticles causes them to be superparamagnetic as their size decreases. Magnetic hysteresis disappears in superparamagnetic particles and no heat is generated as a result of the hysteresis loss. As a result, superparamagnetic nanoparticles can only generate heat via relaxation loss, such as Neal and Brown relaxation losses. First, the heat is generated during the reversal of magnetization of the particles in an alternating magnetic field, which is known as the Neal relaxation loss. The particles convert magnetic energy to heat in this process. The ratio of anisotropic energy to thermal energy influences the relaxation time of the reversal of magnetization. Magnetization vector in the oscillating magnetic field constantly revert its direction. In this process, the heat is generated. So this process is called yield relaxation loss. The alternating magnetic field repeatedly reverses the magnetization vector. In this process, the magnetic energy is converted into heat. Brown relaxation loss, on the other hand, is the heat generated by friction during the physical rotation of the particles in the fluid. The contact between the particles and the fluid molecules causes the particles to rotate. As a result, the Brown motion's relaxation time is determined by the fluid's hydrodynamic parameters. The relaxation time for Brown relaxation is calculated by using the following relations. Here, sigma is the fluid's viscosity, and RH here is the hydrodynamic ratio of the particle in the fluid, which is larger than particle's actual radius. pH is the volume of the particles. As a result, incorporating both Brown and yield relaxation, the effective relaxation time of the particles is expressed as this relationship. So, in the Brown relaxation loss, as particle and fluid rotate, frictional heat is produced in the Brown relaxation loss. The heat generated by particles in an alternating magnetic field is given by this relationship. Here, chi 0 is the susceptibility of the particles at rest, and H0 here is the frequency of the magnetic field. F is frequency of the magnetic field, and H0 is the amplitude of the magnetic field. Right. As a result, the heat is determined by the particle's relaxation time, tau, as well as the amplitude and the frequency of the applied magnetic field. A radio wave of a few 100 kHz is employed in magnetic hyperthermia. The particle size affects the relaxation time as well. For particles smaller than a few nanometers, the yield relaxation time is substantially less than the Brown relaxation time. As a result, in this case, the heat generated by yield relaxation prevails. This figure shows the hysteresis curves for ferromagnetic materials. Here show the hysteresis behavior. However, for the superferromagnetic nanoparticles, there's no hysteresis loop. Therefore, the hysteresis loss heating is not possible for superferromagnetic nanoparticles. As the size decreases, the nanoparticles form a single domain structure and become superparamagnetic. In superparamagnetic particles, magnetic hysteresis disappears. This is hysteresis, but there's no hysteresis for superparamagnetic nanoparticles, and thus no heat is produced as a result of hysteresis loss. This figure shows the induction heating apparatus used in the magnetic hyperthermia experiment. Inside the radio frequency coil, this one, the sample, which is aqueous solution of magnetic nanoparticles, is placed here. The RF coil receives power from the RF generator. The magnetic nanoparticles are therefore exposed to an alternating magnetic field. The infrared thermometer measures temperature change in the suspension due to the heat generated by the nanoparticles, and data is collected via computer. So this apparatus is the setup for testing the magnetic hyperthermia with magnetic nanoparticles. The heat produced by nanoparticles in the aqueous solution raises the temperature of the solution's other constituents. According to energy conservation, if the temperature of the suspension changes by delta T and the particles in the solution generate the heat of delta Q, the following relationship holds for example, silica-coated ferrite nanoparticles. This relationship here, MW is mass of water in aqueous solution, and CW is specific heat of water, and MSI is mass of silica. Silica is coated on the surface of ferrite nanoparticles, and CSI is a specific heat of silica, and MFE is mass of iron and specific heat of iron. The SAR, the specific absorption rate of magnetic nanoparticles as heating sources, is defined as dissipation heat per unit mass of nanoparticles, and thus can be represented as this relationship. So SAR is heat generated per unit mass of nanoparticles, so divided by mass of ion, and this can be approximated by this expression, because the fact that specific heat of water is substantially higher than that of other suspension constituents, silica or iron, So the specific heat of water is much larger than those of other suspension constituents. And also the mass of water, we used 1 gram of sample, so the mass of water is also much larger than that of others. For example, 20 milligram per milliliter sample, the mass of nanoparticle is just 20 milligram in the sample of 1 gram. So most of suspension is composed of water, so mass of water is much larger than that of others. So we can ignore these terms, so we can only use this term in calculating SAR. So we can approximate this expression like this. So as a result, the majority of the heat generated by the particles was used to raise the water's temperature. Okay. So we can use just this term. Okay. Here, delta T over delta T. So temperature increasing rate and the SAR calculations using this relationship. The temperature change of the first 60 seconds was employed for temperature increasing rate. Okay. Now let's see 2 examples of the magnetic hyperthermia experiment. The first one, we synthesized the cobalt zinc ferrite, and this particle is coated by the silica. So these particles are the silica encapsulated cobalt zinc ferrite nanoparticles. The histogram here for the size distribution of the particles was obtained by measuring diameter of 100 nanoparticles in the TEM image. So we collected 100 nanoparticles and measured the diameter of the particles. So this histogram shows particle size distribution. The average diameter of the particles was determined to be around 90 nanometer, so about 90 nanometer. The representative TEM image in the right figure, this figure, indicates the encapsulation of nanoparticles by silica. So this little darker one the collection of the nanoparticles, and this gray area indicates the silica coating. The silica cell contains multimagnetic core particles forming clusters inside the cell. So the cluster of nanoparticles. Okay. Well, this FTR spectra is so FTR spectra of silica-coated quartz-zinc nanoparticles. The absorption bands, this one, correspond to the stretching and the vibration modes of the specific chemical bonds, indicating the presence of silica on nanoparticles surface. So, using this FTIR spectra, we can confirm that silica is well coated on the surface of magnetic nanoparticles. For example, the large absorption bands at this here and on here are attributed to the formation of silica swell on the nanoparticle surface. Also, SiOH and SiO metal vibrations are represented by the faint absorption band at on here. So it was found from TEM imaging and this FTIR spectra that nanoparticles are well encapsulated by silica. So we measure the change of temperature in the suspension as function of the concentration of nanoparticles. So we varied nanoparticles contents in the suspension and measure heat generation. So this figure shows heating curves for the aqueous solution suspension of quartz-zinc ferrite nanoparticles with a varying particle concentration, 30 mg per milliliter to 50 mg per milliliter. And using these heating curves, we could obtain SAR. So we plotted SAR as function of concentration of nanoparticles. You can see here as the concentration of nanoparticles increases, the SAR is decreasing. Okay. So this figure shows SAR as function of magnetic components of particles in the aqueous suspension. The decrease of the interparticle distance with increasing particle concentration results in enhancing the dipolar interactions between particles, which leads to the reduction of heating generation by particles. So SAR is decreasing as the concentration of nanoparticle increases. However, multiple conflicting models have been introduced by several groups to explain the effects of particle concentration on the dipolar interactions and the relaxation time. Next, we fixed the concentration of nanoparticles, and then we changed the amplitude of magnetic field. So this figure shows the data. So there's heating curves for the aqueous suspension of particles At a fixed particle concentration of 50 milligram per milliliter, and we change the magnetic field intensity. So as the magnetic field intensity increases, more heat is generated. So that is expected by this relationship. So if we calculate using this data, SAR, we can calculate SAR using this data, and then this figure plot the SAR as function of square of magnetic field intensity. We can see the linear relationship. So this linear relationship can be explained by this equation. So SAR is proportional to the square of the magnetic field intensity. Next experiments, we control the Curie temperature in the magnetic nanoparticles. Heat cannot be generated by superparamagnetic nanoparticles above the Curie temperature. The magnetic particle's Curie temperature is determined by the material and the particle size. As a result, the magnetic hyperthermia's limit temperature can be set using nanoparticle of Curie temperatures. So if we control the Curie temperature of nanoparticles, we can limit the temperature of the heating. Nanoparticles with Curie temperature of 42 degrees centigrade can be used to achieve a target temperature of 42 degrees centigrade for destroying cancer tissues. The malignant tissues can be removed in this manner without causing harm to normal tissues. So if we set the Curie temperature of nanoparticles to 42 degrees centigrade, then heating cannot increase the temperature of the sample above 42 degrees centigrade. Therefore, only a cancer tissue can be destroyed because the temperature is fixed at 42 degrees centigrade. So normal tissue normal tissue are not affected by this temperature of 42 degrees. So only malignant tissues, cancer tissues, can be removed without causing harm to normal tissues. If we use magnetic particles of Curie temperature 42 degrees is used, then Curie temperature is set to be 42 degrees centigrade, so temperature is limited to the 42 degrees centigrade in heating mechanism. So normal tissues are not affected by this heating. For this purpose, we synthesized gadolinium doped lanthanum, strontium, manganite. So this chemical formula. So this figure shows 10 images of the silica coated gadolinium doped lanthanum, strontium, manganite nanoparticles. The right figure, this figure, clearly shows core cell structure. So these LSM particles are completely encapsulated by the silica. This shows the data of heating curves. So heating curves for the powder sample. This is powder sample. And aqueous dispersion of the silica-coated LSM nanoparticles with varying concentration. So we change the concentration from 2 mg per milliliter up to 120 mg per milliliter. So as the concentration increases, the saturation temperature increases. However, we can see here we increase the concentration of nanoparticles. The saturation temperatures do not change much. Okay. This tells us that Curie temperature of these LSM particles is around 42 degrees in centigrade. The powder sample reaches the saturation temperature of 42 degrees in centigrade only, so it does not change much here. The saturation temperature of the dispersion of wide range of the particle concentration, 6 to 60 milligram per milliliter, up to here. So this here, right? So saturation temperature for these samples was maintained at 42 degrees in centigrade, around here. That is the target temperature of the magnetic hyperthermia. So in this way, we can control the limit temperature of heating, and thus only cancer tissues can be removed from this temperature. But at this temperature, normal tissue are not affected by this temperature, because normal tissue can sustain up to 46 degrees in centigrade. The silica-coated gadolinium-doped LSM nanoparticles were synthesized by using citrate gel combustion technique followed by silica coating. The morphological characterization of the coated particles confirm the core cell structure with an average core size of 35 nanometer and a shell thickness of 60 nanometer. We showed the TEM images before. The Curie temperature of the particles was found to be reduced due to gadolinium dopants. This low Curie temperature of particles limited the saturation temperature of the powder sample and the heating measurements only to 52 degrees in centigrade. The target temperature of hyperthermia, which is 42 degrees in centigrade, was achieved with a 6 milligram per milliliter sample. Further, this target temperature was maintained for a wide range of the particle concentration in the dispersion. At least 6 to 60 milligram per milliliter. This behavior of heating according to the particle concentration is suitable for the controlled hypothermia without risk of overheating. Even at the high concentration of 120 mg per milliliter, the saturation temperature was just 40 to 47 degrees centigrade, at which the normal tissues start to be damaged due to the heating. So overall result of these experiments clearly show that our particles are applicable to the controlled magnetic hypothermia. This shows the commercial apparatus for the magnetic hypothermia. This apparatus is used clinically. Thermotherapy treatment of the pelvic region after intratumoral injection of magnetic nanoparticles using the alternating magnetic field applicator. So this machine is made by Force Nanotechnologies in company in Germany. This is the nanoparticle heating apparatus for magnetic hypothermia. The company is MSI Automation, which is in the United States of America. This figure shows the postoperative CT scan of glioblastoma patient, which is one kind of the brain cancer in this region, showing magnetic nanoparticles deposits as hyperdense areas within the tumor tissue. So temperature shows 50 degrees in red color here, and here 42 degrees is the blue color in this region. Okay. So isothermal lines indicate calculated intratumoral temperature for magnetic field strength of 8 kA per meter, corresponding to SAR of 718 watt per kilogram. The brown line, right hand here, this brown line, this line, represents the tumor area identified pre-operative MRI as fused with CT scan. So this magnetic hypothermia is limitedly used clinically, but not widely used clinically. However, we can expect that this magnetic hypothermia therapy can be widely used in the future.